Well, sartorially speaking, it is said that if you're wearing a yellow tie, it's the tie for success. So there's a fine-looking gentleman here today wearing a yellow tie. Yes, okay, I was making sure he didn't take the tie off. Leslie Jaques, OBE, has a very rich background in finance and economics. He managed an international financial institution and has chaired a number of organizations across a broad spectrum of management, education, trade, the arts, and charities. He has a dedication to the sustainability and the future of Pitcairn, and currently lives on Pitcairn with his partner, Jaques, and they are both working diligently to develop and promote the Pitcairn tourist industry. But Leslie Jaques is now going to speak to us about a retrospective on 7 years as Commissioner for the Pitcairn Islands. Leslie.
Thank you, Barbara, for that special introduction, and I'm delighted to be wearing a yellow tie. Hopefully it will signify success for me too. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today in Angwin, and a big thank you to all of those who've worked so hard to put this important conference together. It's so good for Pitcairn to have people such as you around the world who care. I've visited the campus here at Angwin before when I was Pitcairn Commissioner, and I came here to meet with Herb. It's really nice to be back. My own background, as Barbara said, was in finance and merchant banking, so what prepared me for Pitcairn? Well, nothing at all. My time as Commissioner was a wonderfully challenging roller coaster of emotions, joys, sorrows, achievements, and failures. And above all, an opportunity to make a difference, and I thank God for that opportunity. I'll never forget my first sight of Pitcairn Island, its volcanic cliffs rising from the South Pacific, a sense of history, and I'd have to say a sense of apprehension. I became Commissioner on September 14, 2003, having originally turned down the role. I often wonder what direction my life might have taken had I not been persuaded to reconsider. It would have been, I think, so much poorer. Pitcairn in 2003 had just lost its last regular shipping service. Its income streams, mainly from philately, had reduced significantly over the years, with accumulated reserves absorbing the losses until the reserves themselves were about to be extinguished. The island's income was less than 10% of the cost of running the island. Pitcairn had been neglected and run down over many years. My predecessor had left under something of controversial circumstances, and substantial urgent infrastructure development was needed. We embarked first on a process of regeneration. Despite the lack of funds, 2 supply ships with essential equipment for repairs and maintenance were sent to the island in quick succession. Original requests for assistance from Her Majesty's government were not met with universal support, quite the opposite. The Island Council was populated by off-islanders to whom many in the community deferred. There was a lack of self-esteem within the community and a lack of trust of outsiders, which was inevitable with people who had seemingly been let down forever. So we looked at wealth creation, infrastructure and service with the aim to create a more sustainable economy with full employment, higher standards of living, increased discretionary spending, and trying to break Pitcairn's isolation with affordable regular transport, improved technology, an economy built around tourism, leveraging off the Bounty legacy, the group's unique flora and fauna, its prehistoric settlements, its Polynesian heritage, and the development of small-scale exports, and above all, looking to repopulate, without which there would be no future. But to facilitate all of this, an infrastructure had to be put in place. A changing of the guard at DFID thankfully saw Martin Rapley take responsibility for Pitcairn, and together with Matthew Forbes, the Deputy Governor, we became a strong lobbying group spreading a positive Pitcairn message in London and Brussels and raising funds for projects from DFID and from the European Union. The first stage of redevelopment, the rebuilding of the slipway and jetty, and the construction of a concrete road up the aptly named Hill of Difficulty was completed on time and inside budget in September 2006. The project brought the community together. Heavy equipment from the project came ashore by barge, and members of the McConnell Dowell construction team wore breathing apparatus, just in case. Many had said this couldn't be done. Many, myself included, had little sleep the night before. It was an emotional moment for many of us. We rebuilt the schoolhouse, sending a positive message about Pitcairn's future. We raised funds by bombarding Her Majesty's government with a series of photographs of rotting timber and broken windows. I've still got them on my laptop today. We introduced a new satellite communication system providing increased bandwidth, video conferencing facilities, a telephone system linked to the New Zealand system, and television with CNN and a movie channel, the only English language feed from French Polynesia. We built a museum to house a collection of bounty and prehistoric artifacts, and we sought the return of items from around the world for the museum. We created an eco-trail to showcase Pitcairn's 11 endemic plants, and that was created with the support of Trinity College in Dublin. We introduced a minimum wage, and we got funding confirmed from the European Union to construct an alternative landing at Tedside, where the work is about to begin. The proposal, which was finally approved by the EU, was written in part by island personnel, and that went down superbly with the European Union in Brussels. Watching the unloading process on supply ship day showed us that we needed to do things better. The break bulk unloading system was replaced by specially built 6-foot by 6-foot containers, which could be packed in New Zealand and unloaded from the supply ship straight onto the longboats, where they were taken to the edge to be unloaded and distributed. No more sacks of flour split open with the contents spilling out in appalling weather into Bounty Bay. We then shipped a 20-ton crane into Bounty Bay by barge to make loading and unloading easier. The wind generators for which funding was secured was delayed, firstly by the successful bidder who couldn't actually deliver, and now by a rethink which will ultimately lead to a mix and match combination of wind and solar. The funding is there, the funding is put aside, but this is still very frustrating. We built on the small home loan scheme introduced by my predecessor, offering interest-free loans of up to $40,000 for first-time builders and $20,000 for home improvements. And we also introduced a small project loan scheme for small-ticket items like outboard motors. And certainly people at DFID raised their eyebrows. You've got an economy that's bankrupt. You're on budgetary aid and you're giving interest-free loans to the community. Why are you doing that? Because we want them to invest in the future of Pitcairn. That's why we did it. Many in the community have taken advantage of this. We gave honey producers the opportunity to develop their hives, and we brought an apiarist to the island for 3 months to work with the community to further hone their skills. And with the invaluable help of Glyn Christian, we successfully marketed Pitcairn honey worldwide. It's the purest honey in the world, and it's now sold in the top gourmet delicatessen stores in the UK, Partridge and Fortnum and Masons, and it's enjoyed in the morning by Prince Charles and by the Queen with their breakfast. We reintroduced the Anzac Day dawn ceremony to honour members of the Pitcairn community who served in 2 world wars. Pitcairn took its rightful place among other UK overseas territories as part of the wider EU community. We work with the Secretariat of the Pacific Community in defining objectives and developing a joint country strategy for development. We developed relationships with our nearest neighbour, French Polynesia, writing a memorandum of understanding which opened up trade and exporting possibilities. When the French Polynesian President Oscar Temaru invited me to share a pizza with him in Copenhagen en route to an EU conference in Greenland, I readily agreed. I don't eat seafood of any kind, so when Oscar ordered a seafood pizza with extra anchovies, I managed to eat the pizza while conversing and feeling physically sick, the things we do. For a number of reasons, the hoped-for airstrip couldn't happen. The length of available flat land for a runway, the size of the aircraft as a result, and the myriad of compliance issues for passenger transport meant that the project had to be parked. We're still not able to provide affordable transport for Pitcairners, as the current service is simply too expensive. It may be in time that an airstrip is possible, and technology is changing all the time. And certainly affordable transport for Pitcairners has to be a possibility. And then in 2007, we sought to restructure the governance and government, devolving operational responsibility to the community with the creation of GPI, the Government of Pitcairn Islands, and the Pitcairn Development Team. PDT brought together members of the community from across the political spectrum and wrote over 30 policies and procedures to underpin the new structure. 4 operating divisions were created, run by divisional managers, and the structure itself became known as the Christmas tree. The off-islanders no longer sat on council, and that wasn't a reflection on the calibre of the people, but rather that it's Pitcairn's council. The new structure went live on the 1st of April 2009, with a new constitution implemented on the 1st of April 2010. Sometimes when I think back, all of this seems remarkable, particularly so given the background against which it was achieved. At times it wasn't easy. There were down days, but we never gave up. There were lots of prayers. Public meetings sometimes became public riots, and I often thought of the days way back in the Wild West when the US was taking shape. Wild meetings in saloons with people firing bullets through the ceilings. But we kept focused. We kept on task. Pitcairn was always the bigger picture. Drawing a line and moving on became a bit of an overused cliche, but that's what we had to do. All of us, and most of us did. A changing of the guard of Her Majesty's personnel presented fresh challenges and left me at times quite bewildered. With British government personnel, commitment and attitude can vary according to the people. There doesn't seem to be much benchmarking, and then they move on. Pitcairn was most fortunate indeed to have had the support of such excellent advocates as Martin and Matthew, and Phil Mason, the head of Overseas Territories at DFID during this time of change. I was grateful to the many people at the FCO and DFID who cared about Pitcairn for their support and their encouragement. What changed? People changed. New people didn't agree with the direction we were taking, and things became difficult as a result. There were even attempts to stop the alternate harbour project, but thanks to the support of DFID and others within the FCO, the project went ahead. On Pitcairn, public dinners are shared meals and everyone contributes. For my farewell dinner, the then governor's representative on island sought permission from her superiors in Wellington to supply sausages found in her freezer well past their use-by date. A fascinating and highly amusing exchange between the GovRep and the Governor's Office on the contribution of out-of-date sausages was forwarded to me. It's the sort of thing one frames and hangs on the bathroom wall. But it showed what the relationship had become. Pitcairn's new Governor, Vicky Treadell, and Deputy Governor, Kevin Lynch, are good people. All we can ask of them is that they're fair. Pitcairn's structure is now into its 3rd year. Overall, things are going well, but the promised training for the community, an essential part of the process, was never delivered, with opportunities lost and good governance at times floundering as a result. Empowerment for the people will come with training, as will proper performance appraisal and job satisfaction, an important part of the process, but these things do take time, and a training program will begin before the end of the year. It's important that the relationships established with other overseas territories are built upon and not neglected. UK overseas territories have much to offer and many experiences to share. There's much we can learn. The minimum wage of $10 an hour has become the maximum, which efforts have been made to prevent reward for hard work. Salary levels overall will remain low, with many struggling to make ends meet. Performance management and an incentive structure will address this. With a workforce of just over 30, Pitcairn will only survive if everyone is prepared to pull their weight. There's still much work to be done. Everyone has a part to play, and everyone must be encouraged to play it. Like communism, if the wage for producing one shoe is the same as that for producing 10, where's the incentive to produce 10? And that has to change. 7 years have passed so quickly. So much has been achieved. There have been so many positive changes to Pitcairn's governance and infrastructure. I had the good fortune to bring together a number of ideas and turn them successfully into worthwhile projects for the benefit of the community. We now have firm foundations on which to build, and Pitcairn must take that opportunity before it's too late. We're moving rapidly demographically to an aging population. We have to attract young families, both from the traditional diaspora and from outside. We must allow children to come. We must make outsiders welcome and look at the realities and what will happen if we don't. I detest the word outsiders. Pitcairn needs to conquer its own xenophobia, but the people who come must have the right skills and contribute positively to the community. My most lasting memories of my time as Commissioner will be simple ones, like being Santa for the children at Christmas, like remapping the cemetery and locating every known grave since the return of the Pitcairners from Norfolk Island in 1858. This took extensive research of the births and deaths registered and the hard work and local knowledge of a number of seniors without which this would not have been possible. Almost the entire community came together to tidy the cemetery and to place a simple bronze plaque to mark every grave. The rededication of the ceremony on Pitcairn Day, 2nd July 2011, was a wonderful occasion. And after the ceremony, graves were visited by a number of wonderful stories told of times and people gone by. I remember the first time the Pitcairn community was able to watch the Olympic Games on television. It became the talk of the island. And it didn't matter to anyone that the Polynesian feed was in French. A special memory, a special moment. No one believed it was possible. Devolving operational responsibility to the community always meant that I would be working myself out of a job, but few things gave me greater pleasure. I still have a role to play, and I enjoy being secretary to the council. I could not write a retrospective on my time as Commissioner without thanking my colleagues at PIO for their support and encouragement, and to say thank you to the people of Pitcairn Island who supported me initially and those who followed. That made the difference. I worked with Jaques during this time and we became close. I returned to Pitcairn in December 2010 as her partner and have settled into Pitcairn life. Jaques and I mowed lawns and collected rubbish to make ends meet. I never thought collecting rubbish would be such an enjoyable experience, and there were many jokes about me turning up to collect rubbish in a suit. Jaques and I began Pitcairn Travel to try to attract more tourists to the island. It's early days yet, but 3 charters ran this year with more planned for 2013. These trips contribute to both the government and private economies of Pitcairn, so a win-win for everyone. When representatives of the overseas territories were invited to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen in 2006, Her Majesty was remarkably well briefed on Pitcairn affairs and showed interest and support for Pitcairn's future. It's a sense of how far Pitcairn has come that members of the Pitcairn community now take their rightful place at important conferences around the world. There was a time not long ago when Pitcairn did not even know the international treaties to which it had become a signatory. Pitcairn language and culture is now an important part of the school curriculum, a long way from the days not that long ago when Pitcairn was not even allowed to be spoken at school. It's a small community that must repopulate to survive. Can we build a world where this small community can live peaceably together? Can people pot away their differences and work together? Can I? Can Pitcairn's fledgling government evolve into a credible partner with HMG? I stepped down as Pitcairn's last commissioner on 31st of March 2010. Just prior to my leaving the island, the community held a public dinner. Almost everyone attended. A slideshow presentation was run at the dinner, which we're going to show you now. It covered some of the achievements during my time as Commissioner. The presentation was called 7 Years of Plenty. Thank you. At my farewell dinner on the island, the community sang that beautiful Pitcairn anthem in the sweet by and by. And a whole raft of thoughts went through my mind, joys and sorrows, emotion, and above all, hope for the future. Thank you. Thank you.